Monday episode of the Dobbin Bandits. I'm Orrin Phillips, and today we have an old friend on. It's been a long time coming. We have him here with us. It is Joe Ely Carrales III, the man behind Improbable Girl and the Wonder Kitty, one of the best independent comic books out there. Joe has an incredible life. He is a teacher as well, and so education goes a lot into what he does and what he creates. He's also one of the kindest people you're ever going to meet and one of the most hardworking guys in the independent comic industry. So we're so happy to have him. Sit back and enjoy our chat with our friend Joe. Joe Ely Carrales. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time.
Lauren, thanks for having me. Let me just say before we begin that I really do appreciate the job that you and the other guys do. In fact, I was asked to do a college lecture on independent and small press comics, and I listed Dollar Bin Bandits as one of the three resources online where they could go to for pure primary sources. You're talking to the movers and shakers. They're documenting stories that you probably aren't going to get anywhere else. Y'all are doing a great service. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to see if I can wrangle those guys to maybe do some work with y'all's interviews. Like I said, they are bastions of primary sources. And maybe just write up some stuff about that for their classes and the like, to be more scholarly, so that y'all can have punched into academia.
I
But yeah, y'all
appreciate
do a
that.
great job, and y'all have some of the best guests on. And so I'm
Thank,
very honored to be here. Thank you.
thank you so much. And I think we first met through what? I think it was the Yeet Comics Presents.
Yes, yes. In fact, I have one right here.
There you go.
Yeet Presents is a great anthology for a lot of people who want to get started, want to publish some of their stuff. Mike Jones, who runs this, and the other guys that are in there, really good, really good stuff. There is a lot of good stuff in independent and small press comics that kind of gets lost in the noise,
Mhm.
but a lot of that stuff is not only really cool, but the artwork is excellent. The writing is wonderful. And sometimes it gets overlooked, like I said, because there's so many Kickstarters out there. There's so many small press publishers putting their stuff out. But the collector, a person who really wants to go into the nuances of what's going on in comics in the world today, mainstream is good. It's there. It's the lifeblood. But there is a lot of stuff out there that is worth looking into. So
Most
I'm
definitely.
sort of the evangelist for that, if you will.
Well, let's go back in time. And how did you first discover comic books?
I'm glad you asked. That is the best question that y'all ever come up with, and I'm glad that y'all lead up to it. Now, my story is kind of twofold. There's the way that I perceived it, and then there was some background stuff. So I'll get to the background stuff secondly, of course. So when I was first introduced to comics was sort of growing up. The generation ahead of me, um, they had just been kids, right? So my parents got married when they were like in their 20s, or early 20s and the like. So they still had brothers and sisters, the aunts and uncles of mine, who still had their sort of kid, young adult stuff going on, and so there were always some comics lying around. Particularly, I remember some of those Whitman comics of like a lot of, I think there was some Tom and Jerry stuff that they had, and Uncle Scrooge. Then I found some older stuff. So I actually found some. I guess this was from much earlier. Some of the Carl Banks, the what eventually comes out to basically be the DuckTales, the Duck universe, and I was so fascinated by that. I got a. In fact, they gave me a hardcover copy of one that was about the Lost Castle, where Uncle Scrooge, Huey, Dewey, and Louie go out over there, and the adventure. What I found about that is it took itself seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, here's Huey, Dewey, and Louie, where you see, on the big screen, in these old theatrical shorts, basically being a holy terror to Donald and stuff like that. But here you see them going on an adventure, solving a mystery, and all this, and that really intrigued me. And so I kind of looked into that. There were also a lot of Mad magazines and Cracked magazines, which were there. I remember one particular one. It was a Cracked magazine, and I saw it and opened through it, and I go, this is odd. It's kind of a comic book, but it's kind of not, and it doesn't hold back at all. I remember the inside cover, like if you wanted to rip it open and make a sign out of it, it said "Unemployment is not working," and I like a protest sign, and I was all like, there's something to this. And of course, countless Mad magazines, older ones actually, because these had belonged to my uncles.
Mhm.
And so and they were already starting to yellow and stuff because at the time, and I'm sure you're aware of this, nobody was really keeping track of these things or preserving them in any kind of way. So they were basically just what do you call it, newsprint. So they were deteriorating and all that. But then eventually I went to our grocery stores,
Mhm.
the Walmart, the local Stop and Shop, the HEB, which is a grocery chain here in Texas.
Mhm.
And I saw some contemporary Mad magazines, and so every time we go, I'd want to get one. Now, there's a dynamic here that one of your other guests, I forget which one it was, commented on. Comic books used to be so much more accessible to
Mhm.
children. Because I remember going to some of the stores in those days and asking for like GI Joe action figures, which were going for like $2.99, $3.
Mhm.
And now that I'm a parent and I understand that money doesn't grow on trees, I was like, look, it's only $2, and my mother would be like, oh, that's $2.99. Well, oh, look, here's the comic book. It's 125 or 95 cents, I think, at the time. Why don't you get one of these? It's GI Joe also. So
Yeah.
I got some GI Joe comics, some random Batman stuff, some X-Men. So I was getting comics from all the major houses and all that. But yeah, that used to be so accessible to children. Now the comics are a bit pricey. A lot of them are for the more adult market. I remember that a number of years ago putting out collectors items and fancy ultra covers and all this, quite an expensive affair. I'm trying to rectify that by donating some of the indie comics to local libraries,
Mhm.
and I'm going to try to children's hospitals and stuff, kid friendly stuff that people put out. That way, kids can have some sort of access to that. Because when you ask that question, how did you first get into comics? That is such a critical question because I look back on it with a lot of nostalgia.
Mhm.
For example, in I think it was 88 or 89, we're in the South here, so we suffer from hurricanes.
Mhm.
I remember since we had the most substantial house because we're from poor origins,
Mhm.
uh, my grandparents, my great grandmother, an aunt, and a cousin of mine came to shelter with us. And so we're there all up in the house. Here's this Category 5 hurricane coming to wipe out the region. It didn't, but
Yeah.
it could have. So we're all huddled in there. And what do we have? We have comic books. We're reading the Mad magazine. The one had parody of Double Dare
Mhm.
and all this. And I gotta hand it to Mad magazine. I quote saw all the films from the 80s before I actually saw them because Mort Drucker does or did parodies or satires of like An Officer and a Gentleman. Now, An Officer and a Gentleman is obviously more for adults, but I was reading about it in there. And then when I saw it like 10 years later, talking about like the late, early 2000s, I was like, you know what? And I pulled out the Mad magazine. I go, this is it's scene for scene. Of course, they made it much more ridiculous over here. But there's one scene in the movie where um, Richard Gere's character is fighting with Louis Gossett's character, and in the book it shows him giving him a knee to a sensitive area,
Yeah.
and they made a weird joke about it in the Mad magazine, and in the film that scene actually takes place. So I was like, I see what they did there. Um, and then of course later on, I was a big Trekkie
Okay.
and still am to some degree. So Star Trek comics, I was always amazed at the DC comic books that came out in the 90s and early 2000s of how spot on they were with the characters. I mean, the likenesses were totally, it looked like William Shatner, it looked like DeForest Kelley, it looked like Leonard Nimoy, and then some of the stories by like Peter David
Yeah.
were just like, oh, this would be why isn't this a TV show? This could be, its own. This is good stuff.
Mhm.
I always had a weird relationship with Star Trek. I loved it, but they never showed it in our area. When I was a kid, they showed it late at night. like after the 10 o'clock news. And of course, we had to go to bed at 9.
Mhm.
And then, right when I was old enough to stay up, they stopped showing it. And then Star Trek Next Generation came out, and then our local NBC affiliate wouldn't carry it for some reason. And so I was getting all my stuff from like compilation books, the makings of Star Trek, and later and comic books. So comic books kind of like colored my Trekkie experience. But I started drawing some of those as we went. So what I never got to do was I never got to be subscribed to anything though. So I remember we had a couple of X-Men comics that were in a row because we'd go to the store and oh, here's the next one, here's the next one, here's the next one, and then we couldn't find the next two. Either they sold out or some mishap happened, and then we caught, well, what happened in these two issues in between here, like and same thing with like Fantastic Four and all that. So I really wish that I had been getting them regularly, but that did color me in one way. In the comic book series that I make sure to have a one-page recap at the beginning, so that if somebody finds this comic book years from now or comes across it, they're not just going to be thrust in there because like in the all of a sudden you open it up and Reed Richards is in his house and someone's kidnapping his kid. Well, hey, what's going on here? How did this happen? What have I missed? Yeah, and I like, and I can see why they do that because it's episodic. But I never got an opportunity to be subscribed to anything, and that just kind of did that. Now I told you that there was a second part of this because that's kind of how it kind of played out from my perspective. What I didn't realize was that my father had ambitions to be a comic book artist,
Oh,
and he was very good at it. Apparently, so much so that my grandfather. This is kind of a not the story that you normally hear. Usually, you get that like television or movie thing where some kid wants to be an artist and they're holding him back. No, you're going to do this. Like the Lou Gehrig story. You don't need to play baseball. You become an engineer like your uncle and stuff like that. But this was the opposite. My grandfather saw some talent in my father and kind of allowed him to do that. My uncles complained about, yeah, we had to go out and work in the fields, and Paul would get us, jobs, baling hay and all kinds of other stuff, and your dad would just sit there drawing all day. But that doesn't come out to be a positive story because my father just did several things. He sent off his work to the big houses, to Marvel and I believe DC, but he was primarily a Marvel person. He liked to do Jack Kirby was very into the Mighty Thor and the Journey and the Mystery and all that, and so he would draw up all that stuff. And I think he sent there was some sort of contest that took place in the early late 60s, early 70s, where you could create your own character, and Marvel would back it. So he sent stuff there, and apparently he got a very bad letter. They told him, "Oh, don't be copying. This is tracing. You Xerox this." And it totally discouraged him. It like knocked him off. My uncle George tells me that my father just threw away all his stuff. But he still kept on drawing, but he threw away all his stuff. He gave up the ambition, and before he knew it, he was working in the fields with the others. He ended up going into petrochemicals and working for ExxonMobil eventually, and never saw this. Now, all this time, mind you, I'm drawing my own comics and doing my own thing, and every morning I'm there before school drawing some stuff. And my father never appeared to show any interest in it, or he'd show kind of passing interest in it, or I'd show him something and say, "Oh, that's pretty good." And of course, he would draw us stuff. He liked to draw like football players and stuff, like by looking at the newspaper, and he drew like Vince Lombardi and all these other things for us. But at the time, I was all like, okay, he's this uninterested in it. I didn't realize that a dream had been shattered earlier, and I don't know if he wrestled because he never told me this because I didn't discover this until after my father had passed away. But my uncle George said, "Hey, your dad sent something to Marvel or whatever," and then they told me the story. I'm like, well, this like recontextualizes my entire childhood.
right.
It wasn't that he was uninterested in any of this stuff. I think he was wrestling with the idea, as I was about to say, that if he encourages me, there's probably some disappointment there,
Could be.
which I find odd that such a thing would have happened to him. I've always wanted to find out, not for any legal purposes or anything, just to know what the letter said. Because my father got rid of it. My uncle said that some of what he says is uh, questionable narrator because it's secondhand source. Just to know what happened, because I know during that time, people like Jim Shooter and later on Liefeld and all those guys were very young when they started this. So his age wouldn't have been what did it. I don't know exactly what happened there. I would like to know. I'm probably never going to.
Right.
But to the way that I found that I could rectify this, because it's not a vengeful thing,
Mhm.
I'm just going to give it a shot and make my own comics, put them out there. If they become successful and notable and people like them, yay. If I have a dozen subscribers or a million subscribers or readers who are interested in the book, doesn't matter. We're going to go through forward with this anyway. And so that was a pretty long answer.
No,
Pretty long answer
no,
to a pretty good question.
I was going to say, and it really it covers a lot of ground, and you said you're going to put out your own comic. So how does Improbable Girl and Wonder Kitty come together? Where did you decide this is the direction I want to take?
Well, like with all things, the planning was after the fact. As some of you may or may not know, I am a school teacher.
Mhm.
I taught at a middle school in Keensville, Texas for 17 and a half years. And then when that assignment sort of ended, now I'm a teacher at a high school in Keensville, Texas, at Santa Gertrudis Academy High School. While I was in my other job, as a middle school teacher, one of the children in class, one of the students came up to me one day randomly and said, "Sir, how come we don't have a school newspaper?" Kind of like in an accusatory tone, like, "Yeah, we're being gypped here." We watch all these shows, and every time there's a TV show, there's always an episode of at a school where they're working on a school newspaper, and Diary of the Wimpy Kid. There was a
Yeah.
school newspaper, and all this other stuff. And I said, "Well, all you had to do is ask. Look, I'll tell you what. I will back this up because I'm not going to do the whole newspaper by myself. I need reporters." So I sent the word out, and so the students,
Mhm.
there's always a good like 5% that want to do something like that. They want to write, they want to, be journalistic.
Mhm.
And so they came in, and I said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. I got permission to use our computer lab after school, and y'all can come in and type your stories on Friday or on Monday. I'll give you your story assignments, and then all week you write them, you send them to me. I'll format it with Microsoft Publisher, and that's how the Brahma, the newspaper was called the Weekly Brahma, came about. Brahma, the bull, was a school mascot, and so okay, we're going to put that in there. So they're writing stories, right? And some of the audience, some of the readers are like, "This is kind of dry. There's nothing but, you got some pictures in there. How about can y'all do like comic strips?" But they wanted political comic strips, like at the Obama stuff. This was coming to 2011, 2012, mid rock. And so what they were doing is I said, "Okay, guys, draw some comics." So instead of drawing comics, they would go online and do screen captures of people talking, and then that Microsoft Publisher has where you can put little captions, and so they were either doing that or taking somebody else's artwork and that. And additionally, they wanted mascots, so they didn't want to write under their name. They wanted to uh, create like an avatar they could write under. So like one of them said, "I want to be the what gossip columnist slash advice column." And I said, "Well, you don't want to do that. You don't want to put your name on that because people are going to send in letters, and then you're going to give advice. And if the advice goes bad, guess what? We're all in the legal trouble." So they created an avatar, and they went online, and they found this image, and it was from like a Yiddish language newspaper, and it translated to something like the Yentas something or other, like, and so they put that picture there, and Dr. Lola they called it, ask Lola, and then people would send in stuff. I remember one of them was, "I'm tired of my girlfriend. She's getting fat. Nothing I can do will keep her from eating." And then
Right.
they they gave advice. First of all, you can't be doing that. You can't be calling everybody's beautiful in their own way,
Right.
but this is what you might try. And so they started doing that, and then they were doing that with other stuff. And I go, guys, look, here's the thing. There's such a thing as copyright. Let's talk about that. This is copyrighted material, unless it's like public domain or whatever. And oh, well, let's. I'll tell you what. I will draw y'all your mascots, kind of reminiscent of the ones you've picked, but so if you read my comic book, The Improbable Girl and the Wonder Kitty, there is a newspaper that they work at, and the people who work there, the employees of it, are just the descendants uh, of those drawings. And so as time went on, some of the readers came up to me in class after their test. Goes, how come we don't have any story comic books or strips in our newspaper? And I go, what do you mean by story comic? You know, like it's like a story, like characters, like Batman has Batman in it, and Superman has like Superman in it, and Spider Man. And I go, okay, we'll see what I can do. So I sat down with all my reporters, and I go, look, they want to have some story comics. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have like a comic book section. All of y'all come up with a comic. It can be 1, 2 pages, um, and none of them did. So I knew that I was going to have to be the one. So I said, okay, what's this comic going to be about? So we need characters. So I sat them down, and I go, all right, so we need a superhero. And so they started like creating these like Superman
Mm.
uh, duplicates, replicants, or whatever. And I go, well, that's been done to death. Let's try something else. Well, why don't we do one? Well, we want people to read it. So why don't we do stuff that kind of relates to the students? And I go, well, I don't want to do a like middle school kids solving crimes and all that. Like that's like Power Rangers kind of stuff. That's very limiting because you want the students here at the school to relate to that, but they know that they're never going to like bust the drug cartel or
Hmm.
stop a meteorite or all that. So they said, well, why don't we make the I said, why don't we make the characters just a little bit older than y'all, based on students your age, but slightly older, like 20 something. Like they 2021, they've just graduated from college. And so they're all like, okay, well, what are we going to look like? What are we going to have the characters look like? What are we going to call them? So we'll take this one girl here, we'll give her powers. And the reason we chose girls
Mhm.
for two, one, there were, oh, there's a lot of boy superheroes. We need some girl superheroes. And I was, okay, we can do that. But then we looked in the school yearbook, and the girls outnumbered the boys. And then we looked at the yearbook additionally, and we saw the haircuts, and almost all the girls wore glasses. They're middle schoolers. So all right, we're gonna whatever our characters are going to be, they're going to be speckled.
There you
And
go.
so that's kind of where they went up to. I went to the dry erase board,
Mhm.
and the whiteboard, got a fresh dark marker, and we drew out the first. In fact, I took pictures of those. I ended up scanning those photographs and inked them up, and those became the first one. So we're gonna have one girl, because all you girls have this hairstyle back in like early 2000s where half of your eyes, one eye is covered. So we're gonna give her that. Y'all have these like monster glasses, dark black framed glasses.
Mhm.
Um, let's do that, but we don't want to be too on the nose, so let's make them like the kitty eyes, like the 60s glasses. The other one will just have like a regular pair of glasses. So we looked at, well, we don't want them to have the same haircut, because the only hairstyle I knew how to draw in those days was the one with the bangs in the front, like Hillary Clinton used to have with a band ear, and it was like big old bangs in the front, and they were all, sir, nobody cuts their hair like that. So we looked and we found all the other girls that did not have the haircut over the eye. They had a what do you call it? A ponytail either in the back or draped over the front. And
Okay.
so that's where the other ones. And then the names of the characters. There are look a lot of the girls' names are like uh, the Hispanic names like Maribel or Maricela, and there were some Marys and then Marie. So we'll name that one, and then the other name that kept coming up was like Sandra or Alexandra. And so we took so we'll just put Sandra, which in Spanish is Sandra, which is Sandra. So this covers a lot of ground here. And it goes, so if you look, Oren, we're playing to to the audience. And so so well, Mari, and there was a girl named Mari Sol, and goes, well, why don't we Mari Solinsky?
Right.
Somebody had heard that name or some sort of name like that. And so, okay, well, that creates Mari Selinsky
Mhm.
and Zandra. And so, what are we going to for the last name? Well, there was a girl who had a last name that started with an N, and she wanted her name put in there. And said, no, we're not going to put people's names in there, real names. And then somebody said, well, Nico is Japanese for cat, maybe, or Neko, something like that. I can't pronounce it properly, but that was kind of the idea. Okay, so now I have this Wonder Kitty. Somebody said in flippantly,
Yeah.
and all right, that's good. That Wonder Kitty name will tag on,
Right.
but it needs to be something in the Wonder Kitty.
Mhm.
So we put, originally Mary Selinsky and the Wonder Kitty, and then later on, I think it was after I was like on my fourth issue, uh, Don Simpson said, "That's kind of weird. You should rebrand it to something else." And so we took the name off and said, "Well, she's the Improbable Girl,
Right.
so we'll change it to the Improbable Girl and the Wonder." The idea was, well, you wouldn't have like Bruce Wayne and Robin, uh, you know, or or something like that.
Mhm.
You would have them by their name.
Mhm.
All right, so that's kind of the origin of the characters. And so then I ran the first one, and it was a little one-page strip where they're fighting an evil robot,
Mhm.
and they can't destroy it. And there's an evil scientist, and Nico's running around freaking out, and she unplugs it, and that's the story. And people liked it, but then and during lunch, someone comes up to me and said, "Sir, that was a pretty good comment, but we don't know who these people are." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Who are they?" They're just two girls wandering loose. And so, okay, I know what I'm going to do. And I'm going to make an origin story
Mhm.
of how they got their powers. And so I went home over a weekend and I thought out this idea and I sort of drew it out there. Um, let's see, let's try to make it uh, relevant to the times. These are young people coming of age, getting to adulthood at the end of the Great Recession. They're having trouble keeping jobs. They want to be reporters. They're overqualified for every job they get. Something like Subway, something like Walmart. They get fired from these jobs, but they want to be reporters. It's their ultimate goal. And the students kind of were all like, "Well, yeah, look at all the we're journalists. We want to be, you know, we never get our pick." And then somebody, well, Peter Parker is a journalist and Clark Kent is a journalist. And, there's always an element in that. Like, okay, but we're not going to make them reporters. We're going to make them want to be reporters. Because remember, it's the Great Recession.
Right.
So we're going to put them in the mailroom.
Mhm.
So they are like at the cusp of reaching their goal, but not actually. And I go, like so many people your age, where you're almost there and you can't quite make it, but you're kind of there. And so that's where we're going to keep it. Well, how do they get their superpowers? And what are their superpowers? And I go, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. So,
Right.
well, why? Well, maybe they get bitten by a radioactive cat. And I go, it's not Catman, Spider Man. So we figured that an alien would somehow give it to them. And
Okay.
so I went to the local county park and I drew some backgrounds and stuff. Okay, so I got the idea. You know what would make people want to read this comic, especially the school, if it had locations from the town in the comic. That way they can read it and say, I was here. So I set it there. These girls, flying saucer lands in this park. It's cordoned off by the government. Nobody can get in. They know a way in. They go and they encounter an alien, and then he gives them superpowers, but it's in a questionable way. He's not an alien scientist. He is an alien high school student who needs a grade for a class. He has to do a science experiment, and so he's going to give them powers for an hour and observe. It's kind of like his version of the baking soda and vinegar volcano, and then he's going to take the powers away. Well, it turns out that the flying saucer, there's a misunderstanding. The flying saucer is destroyed. And so now they don't know what their superpowers are, kind of like the greatest American hero doesn't. And so now they got to figure out. And so that becomes the like early narrative of that. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, it's kind of weird the way you have it. Are they in the military? Are they working for the newspaper? What's the situation? Now, I took this part from my own life
Mhm.
because I'm a high school teacher. This is going to sound weird. I'm a high school teacher. I'm also an officer in the Civil Air Patrol Air Force Auxiliary, working with cadets, search and rescue, and all that. I'm also a mariachi musician,
Yep.
and I also run a newspaper. So I got all this stuff going, and I'm all like, you know what? In all these things, there's always like a duality. Like Clark Kent is at newspaper, and then he's Superman. But what if in life they had to be like me and be like four people at the same time?
Mhm.
You know, I have to be Mr. Carr, which they call me in school. I have to be Major Carrales. I have to be El Mariachi Loco, and I have to be the chief of the paper. Well, let's put them in these different spheres and see how they react. So they're going to be most uncomfortable in the military sphere because these girls know nothing of it. I don't know if you've ever been in a cadet program or in the military,
No.
but it's a life you got to adapt to. But they're also wanting to be newspaper editors, so
Mm.
there's that whole element. Then it's also their lives, you know, their interactions. And so I say, you know what, this is great because if I want to do an episode that deals with like military stuff, it can become a service comedy, and we can just switch over to there, and the newspaper people become second. If I want to do like a Mary Tyler Moore show kind of thing where we're working in a newsroom, like a news radio, we can go there. If I want something that focuses on their life, I can go there. One of the I'm a member of the United Fanzine Organization, the UFO, and one of the people who reviewed one of my things over there were like, he has so many characters in here. There's too many characters. And I was like, on the contrary, my friend, life in your life right now, there are thousands of characters. Randos that pop into your life, associates, close friends. I want this to reflect as like you're watching somebody's actual life.
Right.
So, and I took something from Kurt Vonnegut, the writer. Make a character that people can root for is one of his top 8 things.
Right.
And so I started putting out this group of characters, and then I became amazed. Some people preferred the Improbable Girl. Some people preferred the Wonder Kitty. Some people wanted stories about Marty Selinsky's mother because she came out, and oh, that'd be an interesting character. Some people want stuff about Nico's boyfriend, Charlie. People start wanting spin-offs on the one that got the most is something that I don't know if you're following in the comic. You'll see like the pilots that are associated with the whole military thing.
Yep.
They're going to be prominent for a few issues here because I'm thinking of spinning them off
Oh wow.
into their own title, because they, I guess you could say, tested very positively. And okay, some people want, you know, like aviation based stuff. Maybe we can do that. Maybe not. Maybe occasional one shots.
Right.
Uh, I just find it interesting. The reason that I brought up that UFO stuff
Mhm.
is because um, the newsletter of the UFO is called Tetragrammaton Fragments. I don't know if you're familiar with what this name Tetragrammaton is. Have
No.
you? It is tetra meaning four. It is the four Hebrew letters that signify uh, the Lord or
Mhm.
God.
Yep.
I don't know. I try not to be offensive with that and try to maintain the Ten Commandments,
Mhm.
whatever you want to say it. And so Tetragrammaton fragments basically means that this is a piece of like creation. Like we as comic book creators, perhaps if we're going to go religiously, when the Lord made us in his image, maybe he gifted us the ability to create.
Mhm.
And so, and we do kind of have that. Every one of these comic books begins with a blank sheet.
Right.
Every story begins with a empty screen, or maybe maybe if we kind of approach that, if we want to do it secularly, yeah, we can create from nothing, fragments of creation. And so when I'm doing my comic, I'm kind of thinking along those lines. Let's try to make it some good world building, true to life. Let's let it kind of flow in the directions it wants to go. I submitted in February of 2020 the first part of the origin story to Mike Jones at Yeet. He ran it. I got and his this is something that I want to tell anybody. If you're thinking that you want to be a comic book artist, a small press or indie comics creator, the only thing that stops you, like President Roosevelt said, the only thing to fear is fear itself. A lot of people get intimidated by how do I submit? How do I put all this stuff together? let me tell you, it is worth learning how to do that. When Mike showed me, he kind of showed me passively how to do it, how to
Mhm.
submit it, and all that. And then I got over to Comics Wellspring. I learned how to do that, and let me tell you, uh, that was the best self lesson I'd ever given myself. Because now publishing the printing part of it is relatively easy, and
Mhm.
that's what stops a lot of people. Now, small press people will be there, kind of compiling their own books at their own house, and that's good too. That's kind of how I make the distinction. The small press people are the ones that have their bed covered with all the papers
Yeah.
and they're compiling it together.
Right.
And the indie comics are the ones that are gated like printed in a shop and trying to emulate the big ones.
Right.
And so from there, I say, you know what? I'm just going to put one out every quarter and keep the story going, build up a uh, steadily growing subscriber base. Like I said, it can be 12 people, it could be one person, it could be a million people. But I've really enjoyed interacting with the people that I have because they can tell me what they want and I'm not necessarily going to always give them that because subversion of expectations and all. But we're on the 10th issue. I'm working on the 11th now, and I've met a lot of great people. The one I'm working on now is a collaboration with Trish Ellis from Canada and Ryan Howitt, who
Mhm.
I believe you've had on before. Um, and it's been really great. I've met so many people. I've it's worth doing. I should say. Again, a long answer. I
Oh
apologize.
no, no. I mean that issue, Trisha's work on that was absolutely phenomenal. Uh, just it's beautiful stuff. My question for you is, when you're doing a story, do you have a beginning and end point for the series in your head, or are you just going issue by issue of where you want to go?
Now, this is weird because it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
Because it always has to be.
Mhm.
So I was talking with my friend Ken Bailey of the Mighty Energy Girl,
Mhm.
and he and I we have like sessions where we're just chatting back and forth, and these are good sessions. If you're a indie small press artist, have a confidant, talk with that person about various things.
Mhm.
It helps you hammer stuff out. I personally like to go walking and kind of get the idea in my mind, the basic outline. And so I was telling Ken, I go, I have more than just the series. I have like prequel stuff, and you'll see some of this stuff referenced every now and then. Because technically, I could go back and do like this 1980s version thing, which is basically redoing the stuff that I was doing as a kid, but
Mhm.
making it less goofy. Because when you're a kid, you come up with all kinds of implausibilities and all that, upgrading that. Then I have this series, and then I've got a future like space story, like when they're older,
Okay.
and so I have like an ultimate story arc. Now I do have a basic where I want to go with this, and you'll start to see it play out. I want the story I want the characters to develop. I'm not gonna spoil too much, but if you watch the Nico character,
Mhm.
she starts out as this neurotic, spazzy person, very anxiety riddled.
Mhm.
And one of the things, because I had struggled a bit with anxiety there for a while, I want to demonstrate how that character is going to grow. I'm not going to tell you how, but you're going to find out why she is the way she is. And you're going to see her kind of like, she would be a different person if it weren't for these things that happened to her. And that other person will emerge. And I want to show that. And a lot of people, some of the early reviewers, um, could not understand what I'm trying to do
Mhm.
because they want to just jump into the story. And I'll tell you, I'm going to say something that might be unpopular, but I don't believe in issue zero.
Okay.
Issues you should start your story at the beginning. And I know Kickstarters do that because this is issue zero. We're going to see if it like a pilot episode, but I was starting at the beginning. So
Mhm.
you're going to see these characters become traditional or somewhat traditional superhero types, or maybe like superhero secret agent types. But you're gonna watch that process. That's what I wanted to do. Like you watch Superman, and it kind of Smallville kind of does this, but you basically go from Superboy to Superman, and you don't see the process of well, how exactly did he become this? I wanted to show that here are two people who have these powers thrust on them. At first, they don't know how to use them. So the big criticism was your superheroes never use their powers. And I go, if you Orrin Phillips got superpowers tomorrow. Would you be able to fly from New York to Los Angeles, just off I go, up and away, and actually do something? No, you'd probably fly straight up and hit a satellite. You might realize you can't breathe in space. You know, you
There's a
know,
lot of
uh,
it's a learning curve.
it's kind of a learning process, and I wanted to show that. What would this do to your life? What would this do to anyone's life if they suddenly had these powers and they didn't know how to use them? And now they got like the government involved, and then there's that whole thing of, the scariest thing anyone's ever said is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And then you have their goals, like we want to be reporters, but then you also have we want to have relationships with families, and I want to throw all that in there so that it becomes like a master's class. And okay, this is how this works.
Mhm.
So when they eventually do become, uh, what do you call it, confident superheroes, you can go back and look. As a matter of fact, you can sort of do that now because there is stuff in like the first and second issues that are just kind of Chekhov's gunned in there,
Right.
and they get addressed like 5, 10 issues later, and you're all like, okay, did that really happen? And then you can go back to your, oh shoot, this guy is here. He didn't. So I'm not going to go back and insert people. I've already inserted them,
Mhm.
and inserted weird stuff in there. And by the way, you should look in the backgrounds because every now and then you guys might get a passive shout out.
Oh.
I know stacked boxes might be back there. Who knows? But yeah, what I really wanted people to also get into the characters. I
Mhm.
want them to care about the characters. Like I said from that Vonnegut quote, give everybody somebody they can root for, and make villains that are that I gotta have three kinds of villains. I gotta have the villain who thinks he's a good guy. They're just doing goofy stuff. Then there are the like ridiculous villains,
Mhm.
like the Team Rocket type that are um, farcical. And then I need to have a real dastardly, people that will kill you. So I want to throw that stuff in there so people will know. Okay, here's a comedic villain. Oh no, this guy is something like that. So I want to sort of bring out those kinds of things. And one thing that I'm also trying to really do is I'm trying to recover a genre that has been lost in modern times. I don't
Mhm.
know if you ever remember growing up watching movies like The Swarm or Irwin Allen movies like The Towering Inferno
Mhm.
or Volcano, where there's like, or even Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Oh, what's another one? These epic sci-fi, almost like disaster movies, where it's like a globe-trotting thing, and they got to solve. I want to do a little bit of that, not in every episode, of course, because I don't want it. It becomes repetitive, but
Right.
I do want to recapture that because I remember watching like War of the Worlds, the 1953 one, and being so engrossed with how it was like it had this epic scope where they got to fight this, massive threat. So I want occasional stories like that. And but you asked if I have it all planned out, and I told or one at a time. It's kind of both
Gotcha.
because I know where I'm going. There are times where I've had to scrap ideas and say, you know what, this is a better idea, or somebody will suggest something, and I go, no, I'm not going to do it. But you know what I was going to do just isn't gonna work. So you kind of got to be, yeah, you got to practice the flexible inflexible. I know where we're going, but we may have to meander to get there. And also there's another element that I'm going to bring in there, and it's the crossover. I've been doing some crossovers with some
Yeah.
of these other guys,
Yep.
and I find that if I allow other people to play in my sandbox and me in theirs,
Mhm.
it allows the story to be more diverse.
Yep.
Because honestly, I love reading what other people write or draw about my characters. It's just like an extra episode, and it opens so much. And then, like I said, the discussions that I have with the people that I'm crossing over begins to define my work. And so that's another element that sort of causes some meandering.
I say because I love it, and it's one of the most intelligent books out there that I'm reading, and it's such a credit to you. But what advice would you give people? like you said before, there's so many Kickstarters out there. There's so much going on in the independent small market world. How do you make yourself stand out in such a crowded field? What are some of the things that you do, some of the hustle that goes behind, getting yourself out there so people know that, your book's available?
That is an amazing topic. The first thing that I would say in terms of Kickstarters, well, actually, the first thing I would say is the first thing. Prepare your material, get front load, have two or three already written stories, already kind of at least 90% ready to go.
Mhm.
That way, you're ready to go to the printer. Don Simpson was talking about how some people will do their Kickstarter and then haven't finished their book, and so there's a big delay and all that. So first of all, have the product ready to go.
Mhm.
Second, start kind of small. Don't have we need a $100,000 Kickstarter to do this and that. That's probably not going to make. I would recommend starting with something small, maybe $1,000. I've seen most of them that don't make do manage to make about $1,000. Somebody did a $3,000 one and they made 1,500, something like that. Well, what you got to do is you got to let's go for that. Let's go for a 500 to $1,000 Kickstarter. That's going to get your first issue out there. If it there's unlocking goals and all that. Yes, so start kind of small and reasonable.
Mhm.
My way of starting has been, I would say, word of mouth, really, in terms of online word of mouth.
Mhm.
Um, I want to know my subscribers. And I think it's possible to know your subscribers up until you get about 300 or 500. Because, like, right now, I have just enough. I have about 300 regular people that get the comic and are regularly replying and all that. I think that's sustainable just until about 500, because then you start getting so much that it can't do. But first thing, you got to get your book out. Once you got the first one out, then people such as yourself. There's a lot of online reviewers that are looking for new new materials. Go to Comic Cons, go to trade shows,
Mhm.
uh, walk the street of the comic book stores in your area. Because once you develop the core, like I
Right.
said, the core subscribers, that tends to finance your next book. So the Kickstarter just becomes, like a mitzvah on top of it,
Right.
extra little thing
Right.
that helps you to expand.
Mhm.
Larry Hama, uh, I think he puts been faking it all my life on his Facebook thing, but he said something one time in an interview that I saw. Is the whole idea of fake it till you make it. When you put your stuff out, take yourself seriously, be serious, not like pompous,
Right.
but know that you're going to be successful. Know your characters. Don't just throw it up there and let it flail in the wind. Put it out there. Talk to people about it. Make contacts. Make connections. This is something that I'm going to be writing about in an article for the UFO newsletter.
Okay.
The idea of circles. Like, I have a circle of people that I associate with, and this is actually a result of the pandemic.
Okay.
When I was sick, dying with COVID, I was in my bedroom wallowing in the illness, and I how can I put this? Started reaching out to different people. Ken Bailey, the Canadians I talked to, Trish and Ryan, a couple of other people, Don Simpson. One
Mhm.
day we'll have to talk about how I came in contact with Don Simpson,
Mhm.
but that's the subject of another day. But I created like a circle of people, and I would communicate with these people every day. And after I beat the illness, still do.
Nice.
And so then I have like another circle of the Yeet people,
Mhm.
and then I have another circle of the UFO, and
Mhm.
then I have some ancillaries there. My cousin Joe David Solis,
Mhm.
he's from Child's Play Comic. He has a circle of creators over there also, and we interact. And so I find that you have all these little circles, but the problem that I see, actually, it's not really a problem; it's more of an issue. The circles are sometimes, I think the word is insular.
Mhm.
Uh, you're in your circle and you're doing stuff in your circle, and you're not really connecting with other circles, or you're treating other circles as rivals. Because in a way, if you think about it, there's only so much money out there that people can spend on indies.
Mhm.
Um, and there's so many out there, like you say. And what I find is everybody's in their own circle, kind of looking inward.
Mhm.
But what we ought to do, because remember, if we have numerous circles and we connect them, then
Right.
they become chains.
Right.
And so that's kind of we need to sort of do a little of that, not necessarily, because remember, we are here to promote ourselves.
Mhm.
Um, somebody, and I'll get to this promotion thing on Facebook as
Mhm.
a separate issue in a second. But in the UFO, I try to bring out what other people are doing. I try to mention some names of what's going on in the other circles. In Yeet, I try to bring other people into the little circle here so that they can know what's going on. Because I will tell you this, y'all are an excellent source online, YouTube, and then there is Larned and Steve. They're doing Talking Small Press, and then there's Tom Felrath, who's started fanzine live. And a lot of times there's beautiful stuff going on over there, but we don't know what we're doing.
Right.
Like I'll mention stuff that y'all are doing, and some people won't have heard of y'all.
Right.
And so, okay, I'll take the opportunity. Let me introduce you. Look, here's some good watches to see that. So, in other words, maybe a little bit more connection.
Right.
And it's in that connectivity that we can kind of get our names out. Now, on Facebook, it can be difficult. Like, for example, if I have my release, I often do a video and I throw it out there some to different groups, try to find the right groups. In some groups, they don't like that. They
Mhm.
consider that like shameless self promotion.
Right.
But it was Pops Van Zandt gave me some advice that I'm not going to repeat here because it contained an expletive. But what he basically said is, if you're not self promoting yourself, if you're not promoting yourself, who's going to do it? Like, for example, you might have a great book there at the house, but is it going to people just gonna know that? Like, are they gonna be like, I just got this vision of in my head of Ken Bailey's not in the cards. I gotta go online and find it. No, you got to put it out there. So kind of try, don't spam people's Facebook
Mhm.
groups and all that because that they don't like. Make your posts make them meaningful, make them substantial so that people will know what your book is about. Like the one that I've released this month, Lost on the Trap Planet. It's a collaboration with myself, Trish, and Ryan. And I put a video out there. And I'm not going to make a video every day about it. Say, hey, I'm going to put that out there and then kind of just let it spread.
Mhm.
Um, I would I would recommend though in terms of the printing, because inventory is a thing that kind of goes along with this.
Mhm.
Because if you're promoting yourself, you don't want to over inventory and have like 10,000 copies of something that's probably going to take 10 years to move. But
Mhm.
you also don't want subscribers waiting around because you got to get several copies going. So striking a balance with that. That's why I believe in starting kind of small and growing,
Mhm.
and I can grow with the synergy. I guess that's what that's called. But yeah, but the thing is, first get yourself out there. Two, make the right connections. Three, work within circles, get to know each other. Four, get to know reviewers and interview and be kind of active out there. And three, just keep on going.
Yeah.
Like I said, take yourself seriously. Make quality stories, quality products. When they strike the right wind, sales catch, and you're on your way before you know it.
So speaking of, how could folks find your books? What's the best way to contact you? What's the best way to, get these books in people's hands?
Now, right now, uh, Facebook is the main place. You can contact me directly through direct message, and we'll set up a deal. The books are normally about $10 a piece, but I also do take trades from indie comics people, and then I like to do that because I'm going to buy them anyway. Um, and plus, I'll get to show them off and
Mhm.
kind of do what I said I was going to do. My cousin Joe Solis has a website, Child's Play Comics online, and he's going to be there if you're just into getting a book without any issue. I'm going to keep him stocked, and so you'll be able to get that. I'll send you the his links and all that um, when we conclude. Eventually, I might get either a Wellspring store or a Squarespace, but I don't think I've kind of reached that level yet. We're still kind of in the small press world where you can't see below the my Lego train set down here, but there's a quite a lot of junk there from where I'm packaging comics and sending them out.
Right.
People get after me because, dude, you wrap the envelope in like tape, like it's cocooned in there. And I go, yeah, because the first time I sent it out, the first one, some people they were all ripped up, like the comic got destroyed or bent and all this. I go, no, no, we're gonna house it in at least one layer of laminating tape.
Like,
That way, it makes it to you for sure. But yeah, for this stage,
mm,
I'm just kind of cottage industry sort
mm,
of thing. But I am planning on expanding outward. This latest book has sold really well, and I think once we reach, like I said, that certain number of subscribers, it will be easier for everybody if they just were able to order it directly from the printer or from a store. But we're getting there. I guess I should have added that too
mm.
in the previous question. Getting your comic out in terms of the production and mailing and all that. That is again a subject for another day. It could be a film video, but yeah, eventually you would reach the point where you're going to have to automate, and I'm heading towards that point, Oren.
That's awesome. Well, you know what? Because you're putting out a quality product. You're an amazing guy. It's an amazing book, and I'm so happy for your success. And I know there's a lot more of it coming. So I just want to first say, thank you for all your hard work that you do for us as fans, and thank you for coming on, my friend. It's been a long time coming.
Thank you, thank you. Say hi to the other guys. I'm sure
Yes.
that y'all will put them at the beginning of the video. Um, Let me just end by saying thank you guys. What you're doing, like I said at the beginning, to kind of coda this out, you guys are doing a fantastic service.
Well, thank
Like I
you.
said, between the people that you get on here, the guests, the stories they tell, the issues that you cover, there is a plethora of fine primary source material here that is going to be one for the ages for posterity. So y'all keep on keeping on, and you, Mike, Joe, and I think Sean McMillan is
Yep.
associated with y'all. Y'all just keep on keeping on, and we'll keep on watching.
I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much. And we're back. Yeah, I mean, this comic just keeps going and going and growing and growing. We're so happy about that. Uh, Joe does so much for the with the civil defense and all these other great things to help not only his community but others. And we're happy for his success, and we can't wait to have him back to talk more and more and when this comic grows and grows. So if you're interested in the comic book, please reach out to Joe. He's happy to get you on the mailing list. So that is it for this Monday. We have two more episodes coming up for you this week, guys. So, it's going to be a full week. It's going to be a full week for a little while. That's a new thing that we're doing. And it helps us. We have so many great episodes to put out there. So, this is a good way to do it. So, we have more stuff coming along the way, bigger and better names. And as I've said before, I've been killing time a second just because I forgot the name of the place. CBC Awards. Almost done with it. Almost done with it. I forget when the end date is. Sometime in October, and November 2nd is the announcement. Please go to cbcawards.org. Vote for the Dollar Bin Bandits. We would really, really appreciate it. This would be huge for us and for all the other wonderful shows out there. Vote for them as well. It's a great organization, and it means a lot to all of us. So, have a wonderful Monday, and we'll see you later on this week.